exactly. And then I got those images from you yesterday. That was another big question. So the David Flynn collection really is very close now to going to the typesetter, and once that happens, we're really only probably around 6 weeks from having books in print. So that could mean that we'll have this large volume. It's going to be a big book. If you've seen Stephen Quayle's books, like the Giants book, it's going to be a big book like that because it's 2 complete volumes, his 2 most well-known and published books, and then also articles and pictures. But we're thinking now, probably around as early as June or thereabout, this book will be in print. So now, secondly, if you haven't read David's books, there is a reason used ones are considered a bargain at $75 a piece on Cydonia. In fact, Nita or somebody was telling me the other day they saw one for something like $500 or $600 was on eBay. But there's a reason, because David was, as Steve so eloquently said earlier, he was one of a kind. He was an original. And I don't know his brother Mark in the same way, but from what I understand from you, Steve, he's very much in that same vein. He's a genius. And the deal is true. I often said of David Flynn, he almost reminded me of a savant in the sense that he saw the world in a way that nobody else does. And he never ceased to amaze me with how he would see the world, and he would see measurements and distance and things like that, poor old spud picker like me, I couldn't see it at all. But I am a publisher, and I can speak directly to his book, Temple at the Center of Time. I should, of course, qualify that I could never fill David Flynn's shoes in describing it. Those of us like me, I think Dr. Heiser said this once before, certainly Steve has said it many times, others have recognized for some time that David was a man unlike any other, and that's the truth. So none of us are going to try to fill his shoes, but having said that, it was about 4 years ago when David contacted me, and he said, "Hey, Tom, I think I may have found something unusual." And what had happened was, by accident, David, well, first of all, he made one discovery, followed by more, and then more. And what he was doing is he was using satellites to make measurements on the Earth that seemed to indicate that the location of the original Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem was related in time-distance anomalies to important dates in history, especially those that were related to nations that had either ruled or had shown interest in the cradle of civilization, and specifically this area where the temple was built. And the temple mount is considered sacred geography. It's the most holy site by many of the world's oldest religions, including the Jews, Muslims, and others. And there's good reasons around that. But until David wrote this book, what most of the world don't know is how important dates in history were directly connected to this site. For instance, this was the first thing he emailed me. What he found was that it is 539 statute miles from the point of the temple of Jerusalem's foundation stone to the palace of Belshazzar. This was the political center of Babylon, right? And more importantly, it was the exact location where the writing on the wall, the famous writing on the wall, occurred in 539 BC, and the kingdom of Babylon fell to the Medes and Persians the same night. So the anomaly here is that David discovered you have a distance in miles of 539, echoed exactly by the same number or date of 539 years BC, when Mene Mene Tekel Upharsin was written on the wall in the king's palace by a ghostly hand. This was a spooky occurrence that carried with it the meaning that Belshazzar's kingdom had been measured and that it had come to an end. Well, this was just astonishing. So what happened was, Flynn made that finding. He emailed me, but what he wondered was, Was that just one astonishing coincidence, or would he find other specific locations specifically related to other kingdoms or governments that had ruled over or had affected the location of the Temple Mount, and whether the dates upon which their rule had existed would also correspond in mile relationships with the Temple Mount? And what he discovered was that they did, and it's astonishing. And that's what the book Temple at the Center of Time is about. Another case point, by the way, the relationship between Napoleon Bonaparte and his proclamation for a Jewish state of Palestine in 1799. That was the proclamation that increased a drive for Jews worldwide to pursue a sovereign state in Israel. But what's interesting is when you extend the measuring line from the historical center of Bonaparte's Paris to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, it shows the distance in nautical miles of 1799, exactly the same year that he called for a Jewish state of Palestine. So the intriguing connection to Flynn's research was clear. Napoleon made a proclamation of historical importance to the Jewish nation in the year 1799, and not coincidentally, evidently, the distance from Paris to the Temple Mount in nautical miles corresponded perfectly at 1799. And let me just give you one more, and then if people want to know more, they can get the book from us later. The most extraordinary part, I felt, of Flynn's research was when he learned how the year 1948 is marked by time distance relations to the temple. David describes in his book how Britain was the nation that was friendly to the Jews. The British defeated the Ottoman Turks. They became the administrators of the land of ancient Israel in 1917. But from then through World War I and World War II until 1948, London was the heart of the governing intellect over that region. Well, then Israel became a nation again, May 14th, 1948. And if you extend the measuring line from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem to the exact center of ancient London, to the exact London stone underneath Cannon Street that marks its origin, a measuring line from the temple to the center of London produces 1948.40 nautical miles. So, over and over again in this book, time-distance anomalies, they go on and on in the Temple at the Center of Time, including measurements from the Jerusalem temple site to the Great Pyramid in Giza, to the United States, to Russia, to Rome, to the Vatican City, other countries, and some of these include very intriguing mystical numbers like the number 33, the number 666, the number 2012. And after reading that book in its manuscript form, I was convinced that whatever these findings mean, and they are certain to be interpreted by different people in different ways, but whatever they mean, it appears at least to be mathematically improbable that all of that was just by chance. There's another part of that book, by the way, that's over my head and I can't even explain it, but it has to do with David using satellite mapping and history to diagram a pinpoint exactly where he believes that the lost Ark of the Covenant is located and where it will eventually be found or where it's being kept. And if you draw across lines on his measurements and you look at it from a satellite, there's a cave sitting out there in the middle of nowhere with an open mouth. So anyway, this was David, right? I mean, he saw things that nobody else had ever seen. He solved puzzles that nobody else had ever solved. And much of his research in Sidonia and much of his research in Temple at the Center of Time exists in other people's books with no attribution to him. But Steve Quayle and I have decided we're going to put his books in print in this collectible book, and then we're going to tell people, Steve, what we're going to do as far as making donations to his children and things like that.
Well, we basically, and with the help of David's wife, Brenda, and obviously Mark and the kids, and we're going to have a fund set up for the kids because it's only fitting that David had two children, David and Brenda have two children, and it's about time that with everyone ripping off his stuff, we just felt like it was the right thing to do in the Lord So we're going to have this really cool thing, and it's going to be. I think we haven't named the foundation yet, but we'll listen. Neither Tom or I will have any control of the money. It will be distributed to the kids in real time. In other words, every quarter and stuff. But what we're trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, is present not only the man, not only the genius, but let you see this unique life. What I don't think, Tom, one of the tragedies with all the critics out there, I don't think they ever understand what people go through, especially David, the last months of his life. By the way, he never lost his faith. He got down at times, and I remember the last time I was with him in his apartment, I spent all day with him, and he was showing me all the rocks and all of the artifacts that he had searched through the mountains of Montana and all of the things. All I can say is this, is that imagine a child with a genius-level IQ and a way of seeing the world almost in if you will, in the most celestial, mathematical complexities, yet it was so simple, and it was his childlike faith. And I wrote in my introduction, and since I did know him, spent time with him, shared, we would never talk for hours and hours without sharing the excitement of what Jesus was doing, what Jesus was showing us. And, it was like lo. Every time and I'm using the biblical word lo, it was like we were coming, the volume of the book, it was written to talk about the Lord, to lift up the Lord. And I don't think people understand that the motivation for his genius was his love for Jesus. I mean, I talked to Mark on the phone, and Mark said, even from the time he was a little kid, he was raised a Catholic, but he knew that there were issues there, and then he just went out to find the real Jesus, and praise God, the real Jesus found him. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a man, in essence, I believe, inserted into the space-time continuum. Because the last talk I had with him, Tom, I said, hey, David, let's take the distance. And I asked him if he could do this, and you could see the wheels spinning. I said, now, when I say we, David, that means you, because you're way over my head in mathematics. I said, but take the distance to the different planets and the known distance to the stars, and let's take the square roots of them. And we started throwing out some stuff. I said, let's four-dimensionally model this thing and see what comes up. Well, obviously, maybe that was one place we don't get to go at this time in space. But the point is that it was exciting, Tom. I got to tell you something. You know how you do a lot of work, you do a lot of research and stuff, but when there comes someone into your life that just refreshes it? That's how David was. He was a refreshing voice, a brilliant, brilliant friend, but also someone whose absolute love and adoration for Jesus Christ was, in my opinion, unparalleled. He really did walk the walk, talk the talk, and he really is everything we're making him out to be. No embellishment, but look, the Bible does say, give honor to whom honor is due, and the man needs to be honored, not ripped off, plagiarized. And I personally don't talk to some Christian authors because, look, when they rip off me or rip you off, Tom, and stuff, what they're doing is they're not understanding so many times the Spirit. Oh, listen, research, we all draw on ancient writers' research and stuff, but when you paid a price for 40 years to come to the understanding, and then all of a sudden somebody goes and claims that as their own, I got to tell you, I understand. You turn the other cheek, but you just don't let it go unnoticed to the one who deserves credit. We're talking about David, so I'm excited to see the complete works, and I'm really excited. By the way, as the publisher of Cydonia, I can tell you this. I've personally seen those things sell on Amazon, and actually somebody sent me a screenshot of it. I think the highest one I ever saw was $1,100 or $1,200, and guess what? It sold. Even when I was a publisher, and I think I have 2 dozen or 3 dozen of the originals left, and they were spoken for. But, the point is that you're going to get the best of two worlds. And I think the thing that sticks out about my mind, or above my mind in everything that he wrote in the center of, Temple at the Center of Time, was the distance between, obviously, Jerusalem and Mecca. You remember that one?
Mm-hmm, yes.
It was 666, wasn't it, statute miles?
Yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, now we're dealing with, I think, Tom, you were posting on Raiders News, is the Antichrist going to be a Muslim? Or is it going to be a Muslim? And here's the one. The last time you and I did the show, I got so much flack. I never shared the joy of it with you. But when somebody said Islam and Catholicism could never merge. Well, we're told in the Bible, for all those, how should we say this, emotionally challenged people, that they are going to merge because there's going to be a one world religion, and the kings of the earth are going to give their power unto the beast. Such a simple thing, but yet it escapes everyone. And I don't think that as the days grow darker and the days grow more perilous, and given where the United States is now compared to most of where our grandparents and our parents, my parents, your parents, where all of our parents were at, I mean, this ain't the same old country. And I wrote, we're no longer in Kansas anymore. And unfortunately, the ruby red slippers don't click, and we don't get to go back to Kansas and get out of Oz. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will keep you informed. The minute it's available, or within 2 weeks, the publisher, obviously Tom will have it on his website. You can order it from him. You can order it from me. The proceeds will be, and we'll define it up front. And what we're waiting for is our final cost. This is going to be a big book, Tom.
Yeah, it's going to be a big book, and but I'm hopeful that within a couple of weeks, I'm going to be on the road for a couple of weeks. I'm working on this documentary film on transhumanism, so we'll be on the road for a couple of weeks. If we get back, will be the launch of Petrus Romanus, and I can already tell that I'm going to be just swamped doing media. But thankfully, the Lord has blessed me in that I have a staff that work for me full time. And so basically all I have to do is just, be the answer guy. They pick up the phone, they give it to me in yes and no's, and I sit and hold the phone and say yes, yes, no, yes, yes, no. So nothing that I'm doing with Petrus Romanus will hold up the project for the David Flynn collection. And actually, the cover designer already has. We were waiting to get the book that you sent me. I had to get a copy of it. They're going to scan a high-res copy of the front cover of Sidonia because they're going to use, both books are going to be on the front cover of the new book, plus some other information, and hopefully a picture of David Flynn. But we'll figure all that out. As soon as I get the first draft, I'll send it to you. What do you think, Steve? What do we want to change? What do we want to tweak? But that shouldn't take us very long, and then Daniel Wright, the cover designer, he'll get that thing done quick. We'll get all the files over to the printer, and right now the printer is turning stuff around pretty fast. About 4 weeks from the time they get the files, we have books. So that's why I'm assuming that, probably hopefully sometime around June, we'll have this new book, and it's going to be a terrific collector's item for anybody that ever cared anything about David and who now want to celebrate this wonderful gift that God gave us in this man, and also be able to contribute something in support of his kids. They're going to have the opportunity to do it. So it's a wonderful idea. I couldn't be more excited about it. I'm glad to be working with you on it, Steve. And like you said, when we get ready to do the print run, you just say how many copies you want. I'll add some copies, and they'll go. And it'll also be in distribution, so people will be able to buy it through the stores if they want to. But the ones that they buy directly from me and directly from you, there will be a contribution that will go into that memorial fund for the support of his kids. Now, another thing that David did to get back on you want to get back now on this?
Yeah, let's get back on that, because I'm going to ask you this. I want you to know I'm going to ask you a question. Did you, at this point in time, your original thought and everything that Chris put together, have you guys changed your mind on who Petrus Romanus will be? Or do you think it's still hidden?
Well, I have my suspicions, and it'll be published in the book, but I'm telling you that since I'm not a member of the College of Cardinals, I'm not a part of the Roman Curia, I'm not hedging for any particular reason other than I'm not a part of that occult society, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And there are some very strange things that are going on that we've only been able to put part of our finger on. But here's the bottom line. People aren't going to have to wait very long. Benedict hinted that he might retire as soon as next month. Now, I don't think he's going to, by the way. I have reasons to believe it's going to happen later on this year. But the point is, it's most likely going to happen in the year 2012. And that's what the Rene Thibault, the mathematician we already talked about, the Jesuit code breaker, That's the year that he determined 61 years ago that the final conclave would occur in the year 2012. So we're going to find out if these Catholic mystics, if these various prophecies, everything from the prophecies of the end of the Mayan calendar, all the rest of it, we're going to find out. But there is something very, very strange going on with the year 2012 that includes a whole lot more than the rollover of the Mayan calendar. And it very much seems connected to the prophecy of the popes, to the arrival of Petrus Romanus, to the arrival of the Antichrist. People who didn't listen to that first show ought to get it and listen to it, because we pointed out how it's not just a 900-year-old Catholic prophecy. So imagine a prophecy that goes almost halfway back to the time of Christ. This long prophecy that foresaw all of these different popes, and the very next pope following Pope Benedict XVI is the final one on the list, Petrus Romanus, the false prophet. He helps give rise to the Antichrist. And you look at Pope Benedict right now, he seems like they're squeezing the last little bit out of him, if you will. They're sending him everywhere. He went to Cuba. He's going to go to other places, but he's being rolled around on a cart. He can't go up. He's got to be carried up stairways. He's getting feeble. The Vatican's own newspaper has stated just a few weeks ago that he seems to be worn out. Well, he's old, right? And some people handle age better than others. And the Vatican's own newspaper also said, as a result of that the College of Cardinals right now are preparing for the conclave that is going to elect his successor. And anybody listening to this show, and we'll have a lot of Roman Catholics listening to it, we might have people out of the Vatican listening to it, are aware that what I'm saying is it's really not news. I mean, it's being published everywhere, but those are facts. Now, could Benedict continue to be the Pope on into 2013, 2014? Well, anything's possible, but it's not probable. And the prophecies, definitely, of occult sources have said that it's going to happen in the year 2012. It's not just the prophecy of the popes. We talked in that last broadcast about the Zohar. 700 years ago, Jewish priests, Orthodox priests, prophesying when their Messiah would appear. And they said it in the year 5773 in the Jewish calendar, which in our Gregorian calendar begins in the new moon this September. Now imagine that. 700 years ago, they prophesied when their Messiah would appear, and they said it for September of 2012. But given the fact that they rejected Jesus as their Messiah, Christians would understand their prophecy as heralding the arrival of the Antichrist, right, in the year 2012. And so then we talked about all the other things. The Mayan calendar ends in 2012. The Aztec calendar ends in 2012. The Cherokee Indian ends in 2012. Mayan inscriptions in two different places. They just found a new one where it talks about the Mayan underworld god Bolan Yakteku, which actually sounds like an alien invasion because it talks about all these motherships or whatever, these what's called support gods, but these giant things descending very quickly to the earth. That's in the Mayan inscriptions. That's going to happen in the year 2012. The Hindu Kali Yuga calendar ends in the year 2012. And then we talked about how Jonathan Edwards, America's most important original philosophical theologian, the greatest intellectual, how he predicted two things. Really, that the Antichrist will appear in the year 2012, but he will break his covenant with the Jews in 2016. So now all of a sudden we have two dates that appear to be important. One is 2012, one is 2016. And there's a lot of stuff we didn't talk about in the last show that's related to that. For instance, June 21, 2016 is exactly 3.5 years, the midst of the week, after the end of the Mayan ending date, December 21st, 2012. But that's the same date that marks the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere and the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, when a cusp line is created between Gemini and Cancer. And if you read David Oveson's book, the secret architect of our nation's capital, he refers to that date as having very deep astrological significance to the founding and the secret destiny of America. So there's a great deal more here. Also, really important to recognize that based on Daniel chapter 9 and the related text, scholars believe that a period of 70 years, or a biblical generation, will elapse between the reformation of Israel as a nation and the return of Jesus Christ. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? When 70 years is added to 1948, the year that Israel was formally recognized as an independent nation by the United States, it brings us through the year 2018, which means that the year 2019, exactly 7 years after 2012, would mark the year that Jesus Christ returns with the armies of heaven to establish his rule over the earth. So, what is all of this, Steve? I mean, there seems to be a concatenation of events that are unfolding, that are involved with the year 2012, that are mathematically impossible. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but I understand simple stuff like, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times. There's a point where pretty soon you hit the exponential curve, and those numbers, those probabilities go into the stratosphere, and we've only scratched the surface. If you read the book Apollyon Rising 2012, you find out that actually the most remarkable connection, the year 2012 for me in that book, was how the Maya directly linked the years 1776 and 2000.
Hey, Tom,
yes.
Tom, hold on. Something's garbling you. Could you repeat that? You just garbled really bad.
You did earlier, too, so I sound okay
Steve
now?
And, Tom, it's probably at our end, Steve. What I need to do is refresh the Skype connection.
Okay.
Everything is going on tape, though, so there'll be no garbling there.
Okay.
Tom, why don't we do this? If you all will both give me exactly 2 minutes, that'll allow me to refresh the connection.
Okay.
And Steve, I'm going to dial you right back.
It's the top of the hour at 10. You want to just take a break?
Hey, perfect timing. It's right on the money. So let's take a break. And, Steve, I'll dial you back. We'll be back in about 5 or 6 minutes, folks. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Omega Man Radio. We'll be right back.
Well, Tom, before we went and got interrupted by the breakdown in Skype or whatever, I want to give you the time to finish out your thought. It didn't seem like we were there.
Well, I think I was getting on kind of a roll. That's when you get anointed, that old saying, it's amazing what you'll say when you get anointed. But much of the research in Apollyon Rising 2012, that's the point that I was going to make, it's kind of like part one of Petros Romanus. If you read the book Petros Romanus, and if you have read the book Apollyon Rising 2012, you'll kind of see the connection between part one and part two, in that this book, in many ways,